The Battle of Smolensk, fought in the scorching summer of 1941, was one of the most brutal and consequential battles of World War II. The intense heat of the summer sun bore down on the soldiers, adding to the already grueling conditions of warfare. The battle raged on for weeks, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The city of Smolensk, a historic gateway to Moscow, became the focal point of a titanic struggle between two colossal armies. The German Wehrmacht, with its blitzkrieg tactics, sought to break through the Soviet defences and pave the way to Moscow. Meanwhile, the Red Army, determined to protect their homeland, mounted a fierce resistance. Its fate would have a profound impact on the course of the war. The outcome of the battle would determine the momentum of the German advance and the resilience of the Soviet defense. The stakes were incredibly high, and both sides knew that the control of Smolensk could tip the balance of power. Smolensk, situated on the upper reaches of the Dnieper River, held immense strategic importance. Its location made it a key logistical hub, essential for the movement of troops and supplies. Control of Smolensk meant control of vital transportation routes, which could significantly influence the war's progression. For centuries, it had served as a vital crossroads between East and West. The city's rich history as a trading post and military stronghold underscored its significance. Smolensk had seen countless armies pass through its gates, each leaving its mark on the city's storied past. In 1812, Napoleon's Grande Armée had passed through Smolensk on its ill-fated march to Moscow. The city's strategic position had made it a target for conquerors throughout history. Napoleon's campaign, though initially successful, ultimately ended in disaster, a fate that would serve as a cautionary tale for future military leaders. Now, almost 130 years later, another would-be conqueror, Adolf Hitler, set his sights on the ancient city. Hitler's ambition to capture Moscow hinged on taking Smolensk, and he was determined to succeed where others had failed. The battle for Smolensk would become a pivotal moment in his campaign, testing the limits of his military strategy and the resolve of his troops. For Hitler's Nazi Germany, the capture of Smolensk was a key objective in Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. This operation was the largest military invasion in history, involving millions of troops and thousands of tanks and aircraft. The German High Command believed that taking Smolensk would pave the way for a swift advance towards Moscow. Smolensk stood as a major obstacle on the road to Moscow, the ultimate prize. The city's strategic location made it a critical junction for railways and highways, essential for moving troops and supplies. Its fortifications were formidable, and its defenders were prepared for a fierce battle. Its capture would not only sever vital Soviet communication and supply lines, but also deliver a devastating blow to Soviet morale. The Germans aimed to disrupt the Soviet war effort by cutting off their ability to coordinate and resupply their forces, hoping to force a collapse of Soviet resistance. For the Soviet Union, led by the resolute Joseph Stalin, Smolensk represented a vital line of defense. Stalin understood that losing Smolensk would be a significant setback, potentially leading to the fall of Moscow and a catastrophic defeat for the Soviet Union. The loss of the city would leave the road to Moscow wide open. The German forces would have a clear path to the Soviet capital, threatening the very heart of the Soviet Union and its ability to continue the war. The Red Army, still reeling from the initial shock of the German invasion, was determined to hold Smolensk at all costs. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, Soviet soldiers and civilians alike worked tirelessly to strengthen their defenses and prepare for the impending assault. The fate of the Soviet Union hung in the balance. The battle for Smolensk would be a brutal and grueling conflict, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. It was a test of endurance, strategy, and sheer willpower, as the outcome would shape the future of the Eastern Front and the course of World War II. The battle for Smolensk commenced in early July 1941, just weeks after the German invasion. Army Group Center, commanded by the ruthless Field Marshal Fedor von Bock, spearheaded the German advance. Von Bock's forces, equipped with powerful tanks and supported by the Luftwaffe, enjoyed initial success. The Red Army, though taken by surprise and outmaneuvered in the early stages, fought with fierce determination. Soviet soldiers, many of them poorly equipped and lacking in combat experience, fought bravely against the invaders. However, the sheer weight of the German onslaught proved difficult to contain. The battle raged for weeks, evolving into a series of massive encirclements and counterattacks. German panzer divisions, spearheaded by the formidable Tiger and Panther tanks, clashed with Soviet T-34S and KV-1S in titanic armoured battles. The Luftwaffe, dominant in the skies, rained down destruction upon Soviet positions. Despite suffering heavy losses, the Red Army refused to yield. Soviet commanders, under strict orders from Stalin to hold Smolensk at all costs, threw wave after wave of troops into the fray. The fighting was brutal and unforgiving, with no quarter given on either side. Section 5. German Blitzkrieg versus Soviet resilience. The Germans employed their highly effective blitzkrieg tactics, utilizing speed, maneuverability, and overwhelming force to break through Soviet lines. Panzer divisions punched holes in Soviet defenses, while mobile infantry units exploited the breakthroughs. The Luftwaffe, operating with near impunity, provided crucial air support. The Soviets, though initially overwhelmed by the speed and ferocity of the German attack, gradually adapted to the enemy's tactics. They employed a defense-in-depth strategy, trading space for time. Soviet soldiers, inspired by patriotism and a hatred for the invaders, fought with incredible tenacity. Section 6. Stories from the Inferno. In the annals of history, few events are as harrowing as the battles fought during World War II. Among these, the Battle of Smolensk stands out as a particularly brutal and devastating conflict. The Battle of Smolensk was a maelstrom of death and destruction, leaving an indelible mark on those who experienced its horrors firsthand. The sheer scale of the devastation was unimaginable, with entire towns reduced to rubble and countless lives lost. One young Soviet lieutenant, Viktor Zubov, wrote in his diary of the relentless shelling and the carnage he witnessed. His words paint a vivid picture of the chaos and terror that engulfed the battlefield. The earth itself seemed to be on fire, he wrote. The ground shook with the force of the explosions, and the sky was darkened by smoke and ash. The air was thick with the stench of burning flesh and cordite. It was a smell that would haunt him for the rest of his life, a constant reminder of the horrors he had endured. A German tank commander, Lieutenant Hans von Kleist, described the ferocity of the Soviet resistance. In his letters home, he recounted the relentless attacks and the sheer determination of the Russian soldiers. The Russians fought like devils, he wrote in a letter home. Their courage and tenacity were unmatched, and they seemed willing to sacrifice everything for their homeland. They seemed to have no regard for their own lives. They charged into battle with a ferocity that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The battleground was littered with the dead and dying, a testament to the human cost of the conflict. The sight of so much death and destruction was overwhelming, a stark reminder of the true cost of war. The stories from the Inferno of Smolensk are a somber reflection on the brutality of human conflict and the resilience of the human spirit. Section 7. A City in Ruins. By late August, after weeks of relentless fighting, Smolensk lay in ruins. The once proud city had been reduced to rubble by incessant artillery bombardments and aerial attacks. The streets were littered with debris, and the air was thick with smoke and the stench of death. The battle had taken a heavy toll on both sides. The Germans, though victorious, had suffered significant casualties. The Red Army, despite suffering even heavier losses, had bought valuable time for the defense of Moscow. The battle had also exposed weaknesses in the German army, particularly its logistical capabilities. Section 8. The Eastern Front turns. The Battle of Smolensk marked a turning point in the German invasion of the Soviet Union. It shattered the myth of German invincibility and demonstrated the resilience of the Red Army. While the Germans had captured Smolensk, their advance on Moscow had been delayed by weeks. This delay proved crucial, as it gave the Soviets time to regroup and reinforce their defenses around Moscow. The battle also marked the beginning of a war of attrition on the Eastern Front, a war that Germany, despite its initial successes, was ill-equipped to win. Section 9. The importance of Smolensk. The Battle of Smolensk, though often overshadowed by later battles such as Moscow and Stalingrad, was a pivotal moment in World War II. It marked the end of the German army's blitzkrieg phase and the beginning of a long and costly war of attrition. The battle also had a profound psychological impact on both sides. For the Germans, it shattered the illusion of a swift victory in the East. For the Soviets, it demonstrated their ability to resist the Nazi war machine. Section 10. Legacy of a brutal battle. The Battle of Smolensk serves as a stark reminder of the horrors of war and the human cost of conflict. It is a testament to the courage and resilience of the human spirit, both in the face of overwhelming odds and in the midst of unimaginable suffering. The battlefields around Smolensk are now silent, the echoes of gunfire and the cries of battle long faded. Yet the memory of the epic struggle that unfolded there continues to resonate, a solemn reminder of the human capacity for both destruction and sacrifice. The Battle of Smolensk, a turning point in World War II, remains etched in the annals of history.